Sukhoigar, everyone, and before we begin, I would like to thank my friend, the original Game Bug, who actually suggested this matchup. He is, of course, also the guy who has done the music intro and outro to all my videos, and actually also made the thumbnail that this video will be using. So yeah, check out his stuff. He's really good at what he does. Just look at the link that I will be putting in the description to this video. So yeah, I'm still taking suggestions, and I've been getting a lot of them. And don't worry, people, I will be getting your suggestions eventually, so just hang tight. This is going to be kind of a fun little thing to do, and honestly, now that I've actually gone through it, I think it'll be rather one-sided. But yeah, let's just sit back and enjoy. Let us begin. Darth Plagueis versus Marka Ragnos. Born Higo Damask on the planet Megiddo over 100 years before the Battle of Yavin, the product of eugenics arranged by Darth Tenebros, he was made to be the perfect Sith apprentice for his future master. By the age of 5, he had become consciously aware of his Force abilities and used them to manipulate the minds of his playmates, even making one commit suicide with a powerful mind trick. Later in his childhood, Higo was given over to Darth Tenebros, who took him on as his apprentice. Higo left Megiddo and began his life as a Sith, being given the name Darth Plagueis. During his time as Tenebros' apprentice, Plagueis became familiarized with the seedy backwater of the galaxy. It was also during this time that he started to refine his ability to manipulate midichlorians with the Force. While the two Sith Lords were performing a cortosis survey on the planet Valdemnik, Tenebros was badly injured and then killed by Plagueis, and the Mune took on the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. Later, during his annual gathering on the planet Sojourn, Plagueis encountered someone he had not expected. He tracked a figure through the Force and came to face with a Bith named Darth Venomous, who Tenebros had been training as a secret apprentice. After a short but fierce duel, Plagueis gained the upper hand and disarmed the upstart Sith Lord. He poisoned Venomous and used him as a test subject in his experiments. Later in 65 BBY, Plagueis visited Naboo to investigate the political and economic situation there. It was here that he first encountered Palpatine, the son of an influential political family on Naboo. After some convincing from Plagueis, Palpatine murdered his own family, and the elder Mune Sith Lord took him on as his apprentice, naming him Darth Sidious. Plagueis then subjected Sidious to rigorous training, and the two Sith Lords began laying the final groundwork for the grand plan set down by Darth Bane 1,000 years before. But not all would go well. In 52 BBY, Plagueis and Sidious were assaulted by Maladian assassins that had been sent by the Senator Pack's team. While they both survived, Plagueis was badly wounded by the attack, damaging a good part of his face and neck and forcing him to wear a transpirator for the rest of his life. Plagueis would spend the next 20 years absorbed in his studies of the Force and midichlorian manipulation and became a master of it. By the time of the invasion of Naboo, Plagueis had laid the final groundwork for Sidious's rise to power as the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. But the night before Sidious was going to ascend to the Chancellorship, Plagueis became intoxicated and was taken back to his apprentice's apartment. When Plagueis fell into a deep sleep, Sidious began blasting him with torrents of Force lightning until he died. Darth Plagueis may have died without the galaxy as a whole noticing he had laid the groundwork for the rise of the Galactic Empire. Born in the Sith Empire over 5,100 years before the Battle of Yavin, Marka Ragnos was a feared Dark Lord of the Sith and a direct descendant of the Dark Jedi that had landed on Korriban centuries before. In 5100 BBY, Ragnos competed against another Sith named Simus for the mantle of Dark Lord of the Sith, and Ragnos defeated his opponent in order to earn that title. After gaining the mantle of Dark Lord, he led ruthless campaigns against his enemies, pitting them against each other so that there would be no threats to his throne. Many years later, he received word of a young boy on the distant planet of Meridas named Tenebrae who had come to Korriban seeking the teachings of Ragnos. He called Tenebrae before him. It was impressed with the youth's power and ambition. He bestowed the rank of Sith Lord onto Tenebrae and gave him the leadership of Meridas, naming him Lord Vitiate. Marka Ragnos died in 5000 BBY, marking the end of the Sith Golden Age, but this was not the end of his story. At his funeral, Ragnos' spirit appeared before Naga Sadow and Ludo Kresh, saying that only the most worthy of them would succeed and be named Dark Lord of the Sith. In 3996 BBY, Exar Kun and Ula Keldroma inadvertently awoken Ragnos' spirit. At this time, Ragnos proclaimed Kun Dark Lord of the Sith and Keldroma to be his apprentice. At some point in his life, a vision of Marka Ragnos came to Darth Plagueis and challenged him to prove his worth before vanishing. 14 ABY, the disciples of Ragnos attempted to call the spirit of the long-dead Sith Lord from beyond the grave and resurrect him. This was, however, thwarted by the Jedi, and he was trapped in his coffin, swearing that he would return one day. Marka Ragnos is remembered as being one of the last Golden Age era Sith Lords from the old Sith Empire prior to its declining years. His memory will likely last for a long time, and it isn't known if he will ever return. Darth Plagueis was a male Muun who was over 100 years in age at the time of his death. Because of his Muun heritage, he was a lanky humanoid with long arms and fingers. While his physical strength was lacking, he was capable of taking advantage of his longer arms to give himself more of a reach, which gave him an advantage in combat. In addition, his endurance was considerable. He managed to fight through the pain after being wounded by the Maladian assassins and killed them without the use of a ventilator that he would later require. And while we're on the subject of his ventilator, it appears that he doesn't require it to the same extent as others like Darth Vader or Darth Malgus, but it is a potential weakness that could be exploited and if damaged would hurt him in the long run. Also, as he is immune, he has 3 hearts, which allows him to be able to control blood flow and breathing more easily, especially considering the fact that only one of them is involuntary, and he has control over the other 2. All in all, while Plagueis lacked physical strength, he made up for it with his extended reach and endurance, making him a dangerous opponent when he was willing to use the lightsaber. Marka Ragnos was a male mix of human and Sith lineage who was over 100 years old at the time of his death. Physically strong as a result of his Sith lineage, Ragnos was more than capable of holding his own in an extended fight, as when he defeated his rival to attain the title of Dark Lord of the Sith. In addition, unlike other Sith Lords throughout history, he showed no sign of dark side degradation, or at least it was not documented, so I will not consider that a factor. All in all, as a result of his physical attributes, Marka Ragnos was no slouch and should certainly not be underestimated. In terms of physical ability, there actually isn't really that much of a contest in this fight. While Plagueis does have skill, the fact is that he is not as physically strong as some other Sith Lords throughout history have been, and when you add the fact that he has some dark side degradation, he does have some weaknesses. Marka Ragnos, on the other hand, has no obvious weaknesses and lacks any degradation from the dark side. I give Marka Ragnos the advantage in terms of physical ability. Plagueis' master, Darth Tenebros, regarded him as being a master lightsaber duelist. The problem with that was that he lived in an era of master duelists, and Plagueis himself considered lightsaber dueling to be tedious affairs and rarely ever used it unless absolutely necessary. But putting that aside, Plagueis was a skilled duelist, even to the point that during his duel with Venomous, he was moving so fast that he would have been viewed as a thunderbolt racing through the trees. Given the fact that his apprentice Darth Sidious was a master of all 7 lightsaber forms, it is more than likely that Plagueis had knowledge of all these forms as well. The general consensus, and I have to agree, is that Plagueis' primary lightsaber form was Form 6, Nine-Man. The 6th form of lightsaber combat, Nine-Man was a jack-of-all-trades style that combined elements from the previous 5 forms of combat. Instead of focusing on a single type of combat like offense or defense, Nine-Man practitioners were incredibly versatile and could change strategies quickly based on the battle situation. Another hallmark of Nine-Man style was the use of force attacks in combination with lightsaber strikes, a tactic that someone like Darth Plagueis, who focused more on his force abilities, would use readily. In addition, during his time on Bald Dimnik, at one point, Plagueis showed a knowledge of Jarkai dual-blade fencing, but as he only used a single lightsaber usually, I will not be considering this a factor. The fact is that while Plagueis may have had skill with a lightsaber, he only used this skill when it was absolutely necessary. He was much more a scholar than a warrior, but that being said, he was more than capable of defending himself with a lightsaber. Like many Sith of his era, Marka Ragnos did not use a lightsaber, unlike the Jedi. As such, the closest comparison in terms of lightsaber dueling would be Form 7, Juyo. The most aggressive form of lightsaber combat, Juyo is geared towards a purely offensive style, a standard form for Sith of this era. Juyo users were typically at a disadvantage as they lacked any real defensive capability. Although the fact that Marka Ragnos was a Sith and was physically strong did give him an advantage in this category. All in all, like most Sith of the Sith Empire, Marka Ragnos focused on his offense and left his defense lacking in combat. In terms of lightsaber dueling, there really isn't that much of a contest. The fact is that Juyo really doesn't afford many advantages to Marka Ragnos, and while Nine-Man is a jack-of-all-trades style and Plagueis was probably not a master of any of them, he does have the superior form. How much this will take part, considering the fact that they are both much more force users, I don't know. Darth Plagueis gains the advantage in terms of lightsaber dueling. Darth Plagueis was not a traditional practitioner of the Force, focusing mostly on more esoteric Force abilities. That being said, he did have a working knowledge of the standard Force abilities such as telekinesis, telepathy, and Force lightning. His ability in telepathy was notable from childhood, where he was capable of imposing his will before he reached the age of 5, at one point driving a playmate to suicide. His telekinetic attacks were considerable, capable of creating powerful force waves that basically ripped apart the Maladian assassins sent against him. He was also capable of Tuda Menace, which he used to absorb blaster bolts and then redirect the energy into his Force lightning, which was already considerable to the point that it could almost kill on contact. His ability and Force illusions were strong to the point that he once used them to fool Darth Sidious into attacking an illusion to give him an edge in a training match. For a time, he was capable of seeing into the future, but this faded after the death of Darth Tenebros. He even had some knowledge of essence transfer, but he chose not to invest in it, instead focusing on ways to keep his body alive as opposed to his spirit. Then we come to his ability to manipulate midi-chlorians, which was considerable and without precedent, making him capable of manipulating the very essence of life and keep others from dying. Plagueis may also have dabbled in Sith alchemy, however, there is no evidence to support this. All in all, Darth Plagueis was incredibly skilled when it came to Force abilities, and while his midi-chlorian manipulation lacks any real combat use, his other abilities made him a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. Marka Ragnos was considered to be one of the greatest Force users in the history of the Jedi or the Sith. However, not much is known about his abilities, but he was capable of using Sith sorcery, which he used to augment his armor and weapons. After his death, his spirit transcended the physical plane, and he continued to exist on Korriban, interacting on occasion with individuals such as Exar Kun or Darth Plagueis. All in all, while Ragnos was reportedly capable of great feats, the fact is that we have yet to actually see any of it. Saying he can do such things is one thing, actually showing them is another. This probably shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. While Marka Ragnos was regarded as one of the most powerful Force users in history, there is really very little to actually support that. Darth Plagueis, on the other hand, was an incredibly skilled Force user and was exceptional, especially by the standards of the modern period of Star Wars. When you look at it this way, Marka Ragnos just can't compete. Darth Plagueis gains the advantage in terms of Force abilities. Darth Plagueis used a single standard lightsaber with an elongated hilt. It is worth noting that the size of the hilt was a necessity because of his immune physiology, and actually afforded him more advantages than disadvantages, but extended his already considerable reach even more. Like most Sith in history, Plagueis' hilt was outfitted with a single red synthetic crystal. Other than that, there is nothing truly remarkable about Darth Plagueis' weapon, and it is more or less standard despite its size. Unlike other Sith and Jedi throughout the years, Marka Ragnos used a mystical scepter and a Sith sword, both of which he had augmented with Sith sorcery. He also had armor that was augmented similarly, and had a pair of gauntlets that were capable of increasing his affinity with the dark side. Until there is more information released on him, there is not much else that can really be said. Yeah, this is actually also an easy call to make. While Ragnos may have more than one weapon, the fact is that he lacks any real advantage against someone who wields a lightsaber like Darth Plagueis does. Darth Plagueis gains the advantage in terms of equipment. Let us set the stage for this fight. For a location, it will take place on the ancient Sith homeworld of Korriban, where Plagueis has come to try and gain knowledge from the ancient Sith tombs there. As Plagueis searches the ancient tombs, he is confronted by a vision of Marka Ragnos, or so he believes. The Mune Sith Lord is caught off guard when the apparition swings its warblade at him, revealing it to be the ancient Sith Lord himself, having come back from the dead under unknown circumstances. Not having time to use his Force abilities to react, he draws his lightsaber and ignites it, crossing blades with his ancient predecessor. Plagueis keeps Ragnos at a distance, taking advantage of his elongated arms and lightsaber in order to keep the ancient Sith Lord from getting too close. Ragnos swings his sword again, trying to off-balance Plagueis and hit him harder and harder with more aggressive moves, but Plagueis counters quickly each time. Finally, Ragnos pushes back and raises his blade up high, charging at Plagueis, but he only crosses through an illusion, the real Plagueis having created a Force illusion to cover up his true plan. Torrents of Force lightning go into Ragnos' body as he is torn apart by them and then by his opponent's telekinetic abilities. Plagueis breathes hard, trying to figure out exactly what happened as the spirit of Marka Ragnos rises from his deceased body. Ragnos reveals that this had been a test to see if Plagueis was worthy of carrying on the Sith legacy. Before Plagueis can question him, Ragnos vanishes into the sands of Korriban, leaving the Mune Sith Lord to ponder what had just happened. In the end, I declare Darth Plagueis the Wise the victor. Well, there you have it, guys. I want to thank everyone who's been watching this, and also thank everyone who's been subscribing. I almost have 500 subscribers by this point. I also want to thank the original Game Bug who suggested this video. It actually was kind of fun to do, even though it was pretty much one-sided. And I want to apologize for taking so long to come out with a new video, but I will try hard not to do that again in the future. So yeah, if anyone has any suggestions or comments, just leave a comment, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.